Hello and welcome to the ISRK Podcast. I'm your host, Kumar Vikrant. I'm a doctoral candidate at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Hanyang University, Seoul. ISRK, that is Indian Students and Researchers in Korea, is a voluntary support group that works towards the benefit of the Indian diaspora in Korea. So, on today's episode, I have the pleasure to be in conversation with Professor Joseph E. Professor E is a political scientist at the Department of Social Sciences, Hanyang University, Seoul. So, Professor E, hello, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Yes, hello, Kumar. I'm very happy to be here with you and with the Indian students and researchers in Korea,
Mhm.
ISRK.
Yeah, that's right. So, thank you very much for doing this. I truly appreciate you being here. Um, so, to begin off, I would like to tell my viewers that today is we are shooting on the Korean Teachers Day. So, I would like to
Yes,
yes, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, and you have my sincerest gratitude for being an excellent teacher. And I think it was the one of the best decisions to actually take up your English writing course last semester. Thank you very much for instilling the seed of creative writing in me. Like, I wouldn't have known that I was capable of writing poems and newspaper articles. So, thank you very much.
yes, I'm very glad to hear that.
Mhm.
So personally, I'm very glad that our guest Kumar likes the English writing class,
Mhm.
and that I was able to develop his talents in new areas such as short stories, poetry, and op-eds.
Yes.
So Kumar is becoming a regular contributor to both the Korea Times and Friday Flash Fiction.
Uh-huh.
So I encourage all the listeners today to to be a fan of Kumar and read his articles.
Yes, I try
Okay.
to. And yeah, so to building upon that, like the Teachers Day, and so what do you think the role of mentors is in our daily lives, and how like is mentorship really important in our building up our attributes? And do you think a good mentorship could bring about the best in people? What do you
Yeah,
think? And can you also touch upon your personal experiences?
sure. I think everybody would benefit from some kind of a mentor.
Mhm.
And I think that the mentor would ideally have the right combination of attitude, like desire,
Mhm.
and talents, skills to really nurture your talents and interests. Personally, I have the desire, but not necessarily the skills to
Yeah.
help each and every student in their chosen field. For example, I'm not an expert in engineering.
Mhm.
So I think everybody would benefit from a mentor who has that right combination of desire and skills to
Mhm.
nurture your talents.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I wanted to add that I think the best long-term relationship evolves
Mhm.
from a teacher-student relationship
Mhm.
to an equal partnership.
I
So,
see.
for example, I think Kumar and I, we evolved from teacher student to now we're both teachers.
Mhm.
Kumar is my teaching assistant, and we're both helping, students this semester to, nurture and develop their writing skills.
Mhm.
So I think I really, depend on Kumar to, teach my class. I think we're becoming like true partners for writing. Okay. Uh, should I go on?
Oh, if you
Okay.
if you want to talk, yeah.
Yeah. In my field of social science, I have personally partnered with 3 graduate students,
Hmm.
not yet at Hanyang, but usually from
Yes.
U.S. graduate students. I'm hoping to work with Korean graduate students in the future as well. Anyway, so for example, I started in 2014
Hmm.
with Miss Cohen Jung,
Hmm.
who was originally a grad student at SUNY Albany.
Hmm.
We worked on like 6 SSCI articles,
Wow.
and since last year, she's now a tenure track assistant professor at
Mhm.
Kyung University.
Yeah,
And I
that's
work
awesome.
right, and I think that's really great to to work with somebody to go from like a teacher student to like a partner,
Mhm.
and now she's making more money than me. And so like I always used to treat her, now she treats me. So I think that's the best kind of relationship.
So how does it
Yeah,
feel as being a mentor to see your student grow and succeed? How does it feel?
I feel really good.
Mhm.
Right. Um, Maybe like some people might be a little jealous. I think my
Uh,
wife was a little jealous because right now at Hanyang University, I'm not a tenure track, I'm a foreign
uh,
professor track
I see.
because it's because we don't and so
So you,
I make a little less money than the regular tenure track professors.
I see.
And then, and I think that, maybe I'm a little too old now to go for the tenure track positions. Universities want somebody younger.
Ah,
And I think that's fine. I want to just,
mm.
I want to do my best to help young people succeed. And then, if they succeed, I feel very successful as well.
Yeah, you feel enriched as well.
Yes, I feel very enriched. And also, as I mentioned, like, and now that they make money, I don't feel any guilt in like asking them to treat me, sponging off of them.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great feeling.
Mhm.
So I work, so like, like, so I work with one person, Cohen, now she's at Kyung University. I
Mhm.
work with another person, a little bit older. Now
Yeah.
he's a professor at Yonsei University.
Oh, yeah.
So I, and then another student, now he's like a non-tenure professor at Wusang University.
Uh,
So I'm really glad to see people that I work with, finding jobs and, doing something with their careers.
I also think there is some meaning in helping individuals grow and you feel fulfilled. Yes.
Yes, I think that's very fulfilling. And also, like I said, like the best relationship is when you go from mentor student
Mhm.
to a long-term partnership.
Okay, so you mentioned that you are like a foreign track research professor. So I would just like to clarify our viewers that you live in America, right? US.
Uh, actually, I was born in Korea, but I grew up in the United States,
Ah, I
and then I went to UC Berkeley and
see.
for my undergrad and University of Chicago for my PhD,
Mhm.
and then I was a professor in America for a few years. But now I live and teach here in Korea since
Mm.
2011. So I'm actually, doing this video with you near near Olympic Park,
Yes.
right, where we had our picnic.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Okay.
So, mhm. So, as you know, like a majority of Indian diaspora also lives in the US, and
Yes.
the broad percentage of the Indian diaspora in Korea is involved in higher education, research, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
R&D and stuff like that. So, can you contrast a bit between the US and Korean educational institutes and the research atmosphere between the two? I understand that it may be too broad a subject to like pinpoint each topics, but can you just touch upon the specific points?
Sure. I think that I think that because both the US and Korean systems are so big and so diverse,
Mhm.
that I think it's better to categorize in terms of resources and academic culture.
Okay.
Um, so some American universities are really rich, some not so rich.
Mm,
Um, and so, some universities and departments offer very generous financial resources. So
yes.
you can just focus on your studies, but others do not. And then I mentioned so last week in my class, we're talking about the history, like, kind of sex work in different countries.
Yeah.
And one of the studies mentioned that even at NYU, New York University, very prestigious university,
Uh-huh.
that more than 2.6% of the students, about 1,000 students total, they try to find sponsors,
Wow.
right?
Mm.
Right. Uh, Kind of like
Actually,
sex work. Mhm.
I also saw a similar documentary regarding a similar situation in the UK.
Yes, yes, that's actually common everywhere,
Mm,
right? So obviously, these people felt that like, they needed help, for their tuition and living expenses,
mhm.
and maybe they didn't have the time for like regular jobs, so they wanted to do like kind of sponsor jobs
Mhm.
to kind of maybe save time. Anyway, but again, I'm not making any judgment. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like this shows that at many universities, students feel a lack of resources.
Mm, I see.
Right. So number one is resources, and number two is the academic culture.
Mm,
Does a university offer a culture of rigorous and open inquiry,
mm.
or does it just indoctrinate students to a dominant narrative?
Yeah, that's right.
And then I see this in both the United States and South Korea, where many universities they lack this culture,
Mm,
academic culture, open, rigorous inquiry. So, for example, here at Hanyang, I have many students from America,
mhm.
and many American students say like, oh, racial inequality, it comes from slavery.
Uh-huh.
Okay, they blame like slavery, institutional racism, And so these American students are rarely familiar with counter arguments,
Mm.
such as that, like that, most countries practice slavery, right? Such as
Yeah, that's
Egypt and
right.
Jews,
Mm.
right? But the descendants of Jews do not necessarily suffer today. And number two is that, many conservative Black economists, such as Thomas Sowell,
Mhm.
argues that it's not slavery, but it was a dissolution, the decline of stable two-parent families, which occurred in the 1960s, which leads to racial inequality today.
Mm.
So for conservative economists, it's not slavery, it's actually liberalism, progressivism, you know, individualism that undermines, Black families and Black people's power today.
Mhm.
Okay,
So
and
it,
so again, like I don't think it's a professor's job to say like which view is right, but I think professors should expose students to many competing views and data so students can make their own judgments.
yeah, I
Kumar, you were
also,
saying?
yeah, I also
Mhm.
think so. Like the professor should be largely neutral to provide all perspectives to the students so that they can think for themselves and come to conclusions.
I think so. Well, so for me, I like to think of my classroom as a safe space where you
Mhm.
can discuss different things. And I also think that professors should maybe play like a devil's advocate.
Yeah,
So, so challenge the student, like, what if you're not right? Okay, what is it, how about these counter arguments?
that could be
And
very
so,
uncomfortable.
right. So I think as a good teacher should really like, I want the students to think like, what did I learn? Did I really learn something new? Did I really exercise my brain?
Mhm.
Okay.
That's right.
So for example, like in my class, when we talk about like legalization of sex work,
Hmm.
I ask students like, I ask students who oppose legalization to think of the strongest argument for legalization.
Yeah.
And vice versa, for students to support legalization, I ask them what is the strongest argument against legalization.
Hmm.
Okay. And then to really like challenge themselves. So, that's the US example. And also here in Korea, we have many taboos as well, such as the comfort women debate.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that's a
then
big issue.
also, right, that's a big issue. And again, I ask my students, I want you to put this in a larger context,
Hmm.
right? So for example, some scholars point out that we also had comfort stations for the US military in Korea
Hmm.
after 1945
Yeah.
and also during the Vietnam War. Were they similar or different from the comfort stations for the Japanese military?
Hmm.
And this is something that students never thought about or discussed before in their previous classes.
Yeah.
So I think, I think I so it make so I want my classes to be really eye-opening and interesting on important topics. Okay.
Hmm. Okay,
That's
so thank you very much for the elaborated discussion. It's I could say like it's eye-opening in certain respects to see such contrasting viewpoints. So thank you very much. Um,
yes, thank you.
yes. So I would basically, if we see the data, and so most of the Indian diaspora works in the tech sector, um,
Yes.
here in Korea, US, or other places as well. So, you being from social sciences and humanities background, how do you see humanities and tech integrating with one another? For example, I'm from engineering, so
Mhm.
I'm trying to divulge into like poetry and non-creative creative writing and non-academic writings. So how do you see these two contrasting aspects integrating into one another? What are your views on it, and how could you
Sure. I
see
believe,
them?
yes, I'm glad you like poetry.
Yes.
So does Satya Nadella. He's a Microsoft, or he's a
Yeah, yeah.
he's a CEO for Microsoft.
Mhm.
And according to his biography page, he loves poetry. He loves US and Indian poetry as well.
Ah,
So you guys have that in common. So, right. I do think there's a lot of value added when you combine and synthesize different fields, especially
yeah.
science and humanities.
Mhm.
It helps people to always like, learn and grow
Mm.
because I think we're human beings, even as scientists.
Yes.
And so we learn and grow together as members of a human
Oth-
community.
Otherwise,
Okay.
we would become too mechanic, almost robot-like.
Right. Right, exactly. So I don't think you can have real scientific engineering creativity
Mhm.
without interaction with other human beings.
Also,
Okay.
I think the engineering output is for the benefit of humanity itself. So until unless
Hmm.
we integrate that viewpoint, we cannot move forward. I think.
Sure. So I think as an individual to be more creative, to be more productive, I think we need a human interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And also I encourage Indians to be ambitious, right?
Yeah.
Not only do you want to be an engineer, you want to be a top leader, top
Yes,
CEO. Okay.
that's right.
Uh, if you want to be like a founder, or you want to create a new company, or you want to be the leader of an existing large company,
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand human interaction, understand different human beings.
Yes.
And then I think an interesting counter example comes from another Indian diaspora person,
Mm-hmm.
Sundar Pichai.
Yes.
Okay, so he is a CEO for Google.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, and then we had a famous case in August 2017 when Sundar Pichai fired a Google employee who wrote a 10-page manifesto
Mm-hmm.
suggesting that the differences between because uh, because people there was this big controversy at Google why men dominate, why men make up the majority of engineers at Google, right?
I
Obviously,
remember when this stuff broke out. I remember following it.
right, but it's not just Google, Facebook, Apple, like high tech in general.
Mm-hmm.
Many more men than women, and then many more Asians
Yes.
and Caucasians
Yes. Yes.
than say like blacks and Hispanics, right? Especially Asians, right? So many Asian men. Okay.
Yes.
And so some critics were saying that's because of racism and sexism.
Mm.
Okay. But then this Google employee said, well, maybe that's not the whole reason. Maybe there's maybe especially for men and women, maybe there's like biological differences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then he pointed to a study that women tend to be in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
but the people who are like the smartest and the most smart and the least smart, the extremes, tend to be men.
Ah, I
Right.
see.
Right. So, that was one study that he pointed to.
Mm-hmm.
But this was very controversial and many people thought it was very offensive.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Right. And so Pichai, he basically fired a worker and said, and he said, to quote, to suggest a group of our colleagues have traits that make them less biologically suited to that work is
Mm-hmm.
offensive and not okay, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think that personally, as a leader and a
Yes.
teacher, I would have discussed this controversy
Mm.
and nurtured a culture of dialogue and tolerance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not just brushing it under the rug and just forgetting about it,
Right.
getting rid
Instead
of
of
it.
just brushing it off, not talking about it, or just firing somebody who talked about it, I would say, like, is this person right empirically? Are women and men different in terms of tech related skills?
I
Okay.
think a scientific approach should be the best one. Um,
Okay. I think we have a two-step approach. One is we can discuss scientifically
mhm,
whether this statement is correct or not.
mm,
And number two is that we can discuss this socially. Okay, that yes, maybe it's true scientifically. Okay, let's just assume maybe it's true scientifically,
okay.
but socially, maybe we can make an agreement not to discuss this publicly.
Mm,
Okay, so I
yeah,
would ask,
yeah.
so we can do a two-step approach. One is let's discuss this scientifically. We can discuss the evidence that supports
Yes.
or opposes gender-related differences. Okay, and then after discussing the evidence, we can say like, even we can say like maybe from now on, we should not discuss this publicly
Mm,
because it's causing too much controversy. It's undermining worker productivity.
mhm.
Okay.
That
But at
that
least we
sounds
can
about
be
right. Yeah.
right. So, but at least we can be honest about it and tolerate. And we can be honest and tolerant. Ask the employee not to bring it up anymore.
Mm,
Okay. So I would give employees at least one chance before firing them.
yes.
Right. But then to fire them right away, bec- when you promote, initially Google said we're this open company, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay. So it almost seems like a bait and switch. You promise openness and then you say something offensive and then we fire you. So I don't think that's right. I think that before you fire somebody, you should state the rules.
Mm,
Okay. Say like, I hear what you're saying, but now we're going to revise a rule that says if you say something offensive, in regards to gender, that you will be fired.
mm,
Okay. So now that I've given you this warning, you can continue to work with us or you can leave.
That sounds more
Okay.
mature and reasonable. Yes.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's how I would have done. And
Mm,
I think if Sundar Pichai had a more, he's a scientist, engineer, okay? I think if he had a more critical understanding of the humanities and freedom, then I think he would have made a more reasonable compromise instead of just getting people angry.
I
So
see.
after this incident, many conservatives became very angry at Google, and many conservatives and Republicans in Congress criticized Google,
Mm,
saying they're censoring conservative views, right? So I think by firing somebody,
mhm.
it caused, for causing controversy, it actually
Yeah.
caused more controversy
It
and
a-
more
it adds to
distractions
the
for your company.
it adds to the flame, and yeah.
Right, it adds to the flame, and that's not good leadership, right? I think a good leader, you want to create a company culture where everybody feels respected and is nurturing your talents and skills.
Yes.
Okay,
So thank you. Yeah.
so I don't mind conflict. I think
Mhm.
conflict is fine. Disagreement is
It's
fine.
it's part of the human condition, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
But you just want to manage the conflicts and disagreements and debate so
Mm,
everybody can grow from this process.
mhm,
That comes from J.S. Mill. So John Stuart Mill argues that that the knowledge grows best when
mhm,
people disagree, when they conflict.
mhm. Because
Right.
you have the opportunity to learn something new.
Right. To challenge the dominant narrative.
Mhm,
Okay. And explain why the narrative is right or not right. And so I think if Sundar Pichai
mhm,
read J.S. Mills
mhm.
and other, classic political theorists,
Uh-huh.
then I think he would have done a better job running Google.
Okay. So
And so, yes, so I think, again, this is another reason to all of you listening in why you should study, humanities and social science, right? Not
mhm.
just science and engineering, because I want you to be ambitious
Yes.
and either become the next CEO of Google or create a better company than Google.
Yeah, we can do
Okay.
it.
Yeah, you can do it.
Yes. Uh,
Obama says, "Si se puede." Yes, we can.
yes, we
Okay.
can. Yes. Uh,
Yes, we can in
th-
Spanish.
Thank you very much
Go ahead.
for integrating a practical example to my question and showing us the picture of how we should develop by integrating both tech and humanities. So thank you very much. So yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, I think my final words, right?
Just before the final word, can we briefly discuss one thing that I wanted to ask you? Like, I have seen
Mm-hmm.
your social science and political science research, and I see that you frequently work with marginalized communities. So I wanted to ask you, like, when you see their suffering and pain, how do you feel, and how do you cope up with the what do you say, differences between the societies in the world, and what can we do to make it a better world?
I think that as a professor and as students, I think
Mhm.
my contribution is to nurture empathy
Mm,
and understanding through good research and through good teaching and discussion,
mm.
right? So I research about, North Korean refugees,
Oh,
LGBT, migrants,
mm,
both political minorities, religious minorities, such as Shincheonji, right?
mm.
The Shincheonji were blamed for COVID-19 here
I
in South
yeah,
Korea,
yeah, yeah.
right? And then, so my contribution is to help people understand
Mm,
empathy,
mhm,
and through empathy we can, and then students can decide what to do politically, right? By understanding Shincheonji, you can decide for yourself whether the government should imprison the leaders of Shincheonji, which
yes.
is what they're trying to do now, or not imprison them.
Mm,
Okay, right? But I want you to understand the situation first.
mm,
um, and then, like, I think that can segue to my final words, which
mhm.
is to quote I published an essay about, this whole comfort woman controversy.
Yeah.
And then what I wrote was that, that whatever teachers' personal politics, classrooms should be safe forums for students to deeply, freely, and respectfully discuss important topics.
Mm,
That free and thoughtful deliberation inside and outside the classroom advances universal justice and benefits all our respective countries. And so freedom, free and thoughtful deliberation. So whether it's like COVID-19 in India, comfort women topic or all these other important problems today, we need free and thoughtful discussion to solve these problems one by one.
Mhm.
And I hope that the listeners, that this will encourage you, to work hard and solve our world's problems together.
Yes. Yes. So thank you very much for the session. And I cannot help thinking and integrating your points with the philosophical musings of Buddhism or Stoicism or any other philosophy. Like we are, at the end of the day, human beings living on this planet. So we should all come together, empathize, and be compassionate to one another and learn how to grow together.
Yes, and the Stoics and Buddhas were great teachers as well. So perfect to mention them on Teachers Day.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to wish a happy Teachers Day to everyone, and I hope each and every one of you will not only be a student but also a great teacher as well.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. And I hope we can get you on the podcast in the future as well to discuss some more stuff.
Yes, I'd be glad to.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you,
Okay.
Kumar.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor. Take care.
Okay,
Thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Uh, Tune in to the ISRK YouTube channel for more videos. I'll see you soon. Thank you.